Alright, welcome back. So this is part 2 of the wine glass tutorial. If you haven't watched part 1, I would strongly recommend going back to it, and so you can catch up. And so obviously with the wine glass you have, you can obviously achieve something like this. Alright, so for this tutorial we're going to go over just basically the transparency and how to create something like this. And this is just a simple scene that I just put together really quickly, and obviously played around with the shadows of the wine glass and sort of playing around with it and whatnot. This really is it's the hardest part about all of this is tweaking. It's very tedious work. So if you're not someone who likes this kind of stuff about tweaking everything so it's perfect, then this is probably not going to be a tutorial you're going to like. However, if you are that kind of person, then stay tuned, because you're in for something pretty sweet here. So this is something I just rendered out pretty quickly at 1280 by 720 with a render time at almost just about a minute. And the render times do take a while for something like this. So obviously, if you're going to want something like this, you're going to have to be patient, because if you want fantastic results, patience is key. But anyway, that's enough of my rambling. Let's get on with this tutorial. So this is something that I just basically set up, and now we're just going to go ahead and not save this, and then we're going to go back to basically our most recent file, which is this. So you should be after part 1 right here. If you're not, well, I'm sorry. So basically this is from the NURBS. This is the wine glass from the NURBS curve that we created. So we started off with this NURB curve of the outline of the wine glass, then we made it into a NURB, and then we converted this to a poly. So there you go. Okay, so let's go ahead and just delete all this, and then delete our history off of the wine glass, and then let's bring this over here, and then let's name our wine glass. Always get in the habit of naming your objects. Okay, so I'm just going to raise this up a bit and then shrink it down to a pretty decent size. So I don't know, something like whatever to your favor. Probably a little too big, still go a little smaller, and yeah, it's pretty good. So something like that. So center it as best as you can. Try to zero everything out. Oops. So something like that. There you go. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is set up our plane. So let's set up a plane. Just kind of blow it all out like that. That's pretty good. And then we're going to go ahead and go to edge mode. And then we're going to extrude this edge up so we create that wall. So when we have to aim our object, we'll have something to look at. And that's pretty good. Alright, same thing with this. Just zero it out best you can. There you go. Okay, and there we go. So yeah, basic scene. Basic, not too hard, and this is what we're going to go with. Okay, so now for the next part is, for the sake of organization, I'm going to do something a little different. Let's say, for an example, you have this scene, and you want to have a certain way of rendering it out. This is where we go in and create a camera. So let's go in and create a camera. And there we go. So let's go to our panels, look through selected, and then just kind of zoom on out. And there we go. So now we're looking through the camera lens. And then let's just kind of zoom on in so we can get a really nice shot of the actual object. So when we go to render it, we can always view this from this angle, from this port, and everything should go smoothly from there. So now, obviously, just for some added bonus, let's go ahead and try to set a key for this camera. And the reason why we're going to set a key for the camera on the timeline is because, let's say, for an example, you were going to go and render something out. But as you were doing so, you accidentally moved the camera because you pressed the keyboard or something, or the mouse, and it went like this. Oh no! Oh no! I don't know where to go anymore. Well, if you just click back to your first frame, you go right exactly where you left off, where you set that key. So it should go right back to the original spot in which you set the key and have it at the frame. So let me just kind of center this a little bit better and get it to around there, and then set a key. So, oops, moved it. What happened? You know, oh, the world's over. Nope, not necessarily. There you go. See? Done. So, and it's all about just kind of you tweaking it, making sure everything's all set and whatnot. So, I'll probably just tweak it up a little bit more. And there you go. Okay. So once our camera is set up, we are ready to go. And maybe just for added bonus, I'll even show you this. Let's say you are in the perspective view and you are trying to adjust the light. However, you know, for some reason you're just like, oh, I don't want to have to go through the outliner again and find my camera because it's just such a hassle. Nope, no biggie. There's a little trick I can show you. So first you want to do is go to your script editor, just clear that out, clear history, and then go ahead and select your camera, and there you go. So now you have a command in the script editor that will show up. So this is basically your basic average mel scripting. All you have to do is select this, highlight it, the select -R camera 1 and then semicolon, middle mouse drag it onto your custom tab and let go. And then it's going to ask you, do you want to save the script to the shelf as a mel, Python, or cancel? Go ahead and save this as a mel, because what will happen is it will show up on your custom tab. So this is my personal tab, and there you go. So now you have a button for your camera. So now if you're setting something up and you don't want to have to go to the outliner and having to find your camera, you just go ahead and press this button right here and it selects the camera for you. So there you go. So basically you just formatted a mel script of selecting the camera and made it into a button. So there you go. Pretty neat trick, huh? I think so. I mean, it just saves you at least 5 seconds than having 5 or 10 seconds to having to go into your window here and trying to go and see, whoa, where's the outliner? Where's everything? Oh my gosh, oh no, I don't know where anything is. See? Camera, done, selected. So, pretty neat trick. Okay, so now let's get into the real good stuff. So let's go into our camera view, and this is, as you can see, this is our wine glass and the wall. Alright, so now let's go ahead and make this wine glass transparent. So let's go and select it and add a new material, and we're going to make this into a blend. So now you should get some really glossy look to it. And let's go ahead and name our material wine glass trans. So there you go. So now wine glass transparent. So there you go. Alright, so for the color, we're going to go ahead and just make this a full-on black. The transparency, go ahead and just up this up to about 86% or whatever your preference is, doesn't matter. There you go. Diffuse, let's bring this down to a 0. And then for the eccentricity, I butchered that word, my apologies, bring that up to about a 0.5. Specular roll-off, this depends merely on your preference. If you want it at a higher shine, you can go ahead and up it to about 1. But for now, I think we'll just leave it at 0.8. And then for the specular color, you can go with a white, but I think that's going to be a little bit too strong of a shine. So I think for now, let's leave it at a really nice light gray. Because I think that if you try to up it way too much, it's going to look a little weird. And I actually do have options right here for what, you can go with the glass, like something like this. If you just follow these preferences right here, I actually found this on a forum, and I actually went with it, and it worked out really nicely. So, go ahead. For the specular roll-off, you go with a 1.5. It could be a little bit too much, probably. Maybe just for the safe side, we'll just go with maybe a 1.2, or maybe just, I don't know, 1. And there you go. And then for the specular color, you can just, whatever preference you want. I'm just going to leave it exactly how I had it before. So, just exit back through. So there you go. So something like that, whatever, doesn't matter. So I think I'll just leave it at that for now. And then there's more options, but I think we're going to just leave it at these options for now. Okay, so without further ado, let's see what this looks like. So let's do a render. But first, before we do a render, let's go into our render settings and make sure we're on Maya Mental Ray. Okay, and then our resolution we'll keep at 640 by 480. Then let's go to the quality, and we're going to set this at the highest possible quality. So we're going to go to production quality. And then for the indirect lighting, global illumination, and then final gathering. For physical sun and sky, we'll just leave that off for now because I don't think it's necessary. Okay, and then everything else we'll go in and tweak it later once we are satisfied. So, alright, so now let's go ahead and do a real quick render. Alright, so basically with 13 seconds, that's a pretty fast render. Pretty low resolution, but obviously we can tell that we got the basic idea of the wine glass. Obviously now it's transparent, it looks like a wine glass, however the lighting is pretty minimal because obviously we're only using the direct default light as our scene lighting object. So obviously we're going to have to go in and tweak a lot of things. So, but I think for now, I think we're safe to say that we can probably up the quality. So let's go up to maybe like 720, and then we'll go ahead and do another render. Alright, so basically now we've rendered it out as 1280 by 720. Render times do increase, so it's 32 seconds for just one single frame, but you can tell that the quality is a lot better. But still though, you know, just this wine glass looks kind of plain, a little dull. We can obviously brighten this up a bit and make this stand out a lot more. And it looks a little angled from my camera point of view, so I might have to go back to my camera setting and just sort of tweak it out. But you can tell that right now we have the basic transparency of the wine glass. So we'll go ahead and just keep this for reference, and we'll exit out. And then as far as just for the camera, I guess maybe if we want, we could probably tweak it out just a tiny bit, you know, something like this or maybe like that. But I think, I don't know, we'll have to see if I can just twist this a tiny bit, just a little there. I don't know, still a little off because it looked a little off when I was rendering it. So okay, that looks better. Okay, so I think now, since we have that set, we'll go ahead and start adding in some lights to the scene. So let's get out of our camera view and let's go to our perspective. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is create a light. I'm going to try creating a point light and see what that does. Go to press 7 on your keyboard to go to light mode, so then you can see what lights are shining on the scene, so what's being lit and what's not being lit. And then we're just going to raise our point light up to about that height. Okay, so let's go back to our camera view and let's you know, do a quick render and see what we got. Okay, so now we are done with our render. So look at this, I doubled that. So now we went from, let's say, 30 seconds to now 50. So, you know, obviously, you know, the render times are going to get a little slower, but that's okay for the price that we must pay in order to get something like this. But however, with the point light we added in, it really brings out the object. However, not in a very good way, though. I didn't say, I mean, I said that it brings it out, but not necessarily in the most decent of way, because if you can tell, if we go back and compare and contrast this image from our last one, you can see that, well, it kind of took away from that, you know, that glass look effect, because now we are camera turned, but also just the fact that the glass now, it's really dark up here and it's way too bright. I mean, the intensity level for this is just way too bright. So that would mean that we're going to have to go in and make some tweaks. And obviously, if you notice that the color of the light is just a plain simple white, and that's not really realistic, because if you can tell from some lights that they're not necessarily just white, it's, you know, there's somewhat of a color to it. So we're going to have to go in and change that, and obviously decrease the intensity of the light. So all right, so let's exit out of this and make sure we have our point light selected. And then for the color, let's go ahead and maybe choose something a little different. Maybe instead of like just a white color, let's go with something yellow. Or I usually go with this standard 53, and then we'll bring the hue 53 saturation. Let's bring this to maybe a 377, and then for the volume, we'll just leave it at that. So the hue, saturation, and volume. So 53.377, and then for the volume 1. And then for the intensity, let's bring this down a bit. Let's bring this down to maybe a 0.7 and see what that does. And this is all about tweaking. See, the thing about this tutorial is it's all about tweaking, and especially with lights, because you want to get the best possible like look to your object. And if you have something like a wine glass or anything you can think of, and you want to make this thing really stand out, lighting is key to making it really stand out and making it look awesome than it initially is. Because if you don't know how to light it properly, it's not going to really give it that bang that you're looking for. So that's why lighting, as much as it's a tedious task, it's also very necessary to know this kind of step-by-step process. Otherwise you're going to be kind of screwed on that part. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's do another render from this. Okay, so we have finally rendered out this. It took less time, so it's only 33 seconds, but definitely made a little bit more of an improvement. But still, we're still focusing on this area right here on the bottom of the glass, the base here, and the intensity of the light still reflecting off it very intensely. So we're going to have to go in and tweak it a little bit more down. But we went from something like this to now something like this. So obviously it adds a little bit more contrast to it, but still, we still got to really make this shine. So I think what ultimately the scene needs is actually another light. So I think we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and create another light. So let's go with the spotlight, because spotlights, you're usually pretty safe with that. And then let's go and look through our selected. And let's just kind of zoom out and make sure that we're getting the full set of the light here. And then just kind of tweak it a bit so it's going to aim exactly at the glass, and there you go. And then for the color intensity, we'll probably have to, with the intensity, we'll probably have to beef this down to maybe 0.5 for now, because we don't want this shining on our object too strong. And then for the color, we'll just leave it at white for now. Alright, so let's go back to our camera settings and let's do another render and see what what we got. Okay, so obviously this one took just a little bit more time, but still a really nice result. Let's keep this image. And as you can tell, now it really brought out the glass of the wine glass here. I mean, not the glass, the transparency of it. So now you have that really nice shine effect with that second light. So that second light helped it a lot, but still that point light is really intense right here. So I think what we're going to have to do is beef that intensity down dramatically. So let's go back to our outliner, make sure your point light's selected, and let's beef this down to maybe a point, I don't know, 4, and see how that works. So let's try that, and then let's open our render view and do another render. Alright, so now we have something like this, and we can tell that now since we beefed down the intensity, the light is not as strong on the base here as it was before. So comparing and contrasting with this, now we have something like this, so a lot better. But what we're going to probably do though is maybe adjust the point light, so I don't know, it's not as high or it's not as low. So let's go back to our perspective view, and maybe we can go ahead and just lower this down just a tiny bit and see if that does any improvement. And then let's go ahead and do our render settings and let's do another render. Okay, so just adjusting the light, I don't really see much of a difference. I mean, keeping the image and comparing and contrasting, it probably just dimmed this area a little bit more, and then as we can tell from here, not as much of the ground plane is lit up. So I don't know if that really did much to it. I guess maybe we'll just stick with it being at a higher rate, at a higher angle. So we'll just go ahead and raise this up to maybe this height, a little higher, and see if that does any better. So I mean, it's just a lot of, there's just tweaking and whatnot, and it's really tedious work, but it's definitely necessary. So let's do one more final render, and then we're going to go in and add some shadows. Okay, so basically with this, I don't know if I don't see much of a difference. Just lighter in some areas, darker. So I'm really trying to beef this down, and I'm not sure why, but it's just not really working for me. So I think maybe the best thing we can possibly do is decrease the quality to a 0.3 and then go from there. Alright, so enough of that. I think we can go on to shadows. Alright, so for your shadows tab, go to your point light, and then we're going to turn on ray trace shadows. So with the ray trace shadows on, now we're going to get somewhat of a shadow underneath this. And then let's do that same thing for the spotlight. Let's go ahead and just do the same, turn on the ray trace shadows. And we're not going to make any adjustments because I want you guys to see exactly what it does without any adjustments made. So let's go ahead and do a render. Okay, so now we have an increased render time, but you can tell that by decreasing the intensity of the point light to a 0.3, we've eliminated that problem on the bottom of the base of the glass, of the wine glass. So now it's a lot, less intense, and it's not as distracting. Whereas, now we add in the shadows, now we got something to go play off of. Alright, so you can tell right now, if we keep this image and comparing and contrasting, we went from this to this now. So now it looks a lot better. However, these shadows are a little bit unrealistic because look how hard look how hard the edges are of the shadow. It's really intense, and especially even around the glass here. It's not supposed to be that intense. It's supposed to be a lot softer. I mean, if you go ahead and maybe aim a flashlight in a dark room up against your arm and see exactly how intense the shadow is, it would probably do something a little different. Whereas if it's something like maybe in a dim room, you wouldn't get this kind of intense shadow. So this is where we go in and make some tweaks into the actual shadow rays, and then go in and soften those up. So let's go and do that. Alright, so for the point light, select that, go to your outliner, point light. The light radius is going to soften the shadow up. So let's probably make this maybe, for now, let's go with maybe a 0.6. And then for the shadow rays are going to soften up the edges if there's anything rough to them. And this one you're going to want to probably increase this to kind of to a high number. So how about we'll start off with 10. And this is just for the point light, so you're only going to see changes on the bottom here. And then we'll go ahead and do the same for the spotlight as well. So same thing, 0.6 for the light radius, and then for the shadow rays, let's aim that at a 10. So okay, so why don't we get out of this and see what happens. So let's do a render. Alright, so now that we've made adjustments to the shadows, let's go and compare and contrast them. Obviously a longer render time, but that's obviously explainable. And let's go back from the first image. So we went from this to something like that. We definitely can notice a difference in the bottom of the base of the wine glass, since in this photograph it's a lot softer of the edges and it's more condensed, whereas this one with the spotlight, there's a difference to it, but obviously we're gonna have to go in and we'd have to make some changes to it. But I think from a general level, I think this is where you would have to probably go in and make some tweaks yourself, because it's obviously more based upon your preference as far as what you want, for the scene, and how intense your shadows are going to be. Obviously you'd have to definitely decrease the intensity for this part right here, because it still looks a little really rough just from this point right here, and then everything off here is a little bit better than what we had before, but still needs some work. So alright, so let's do one final render, and then I think I'm going to call this the video and then see what you guys want to do with your own scene. So let's go ahead with the spotlight and maybe increase this to maybe, I don't know, a 1. Not 0.1, but actually a 1. The shadow rays, let's increase this to maybe, I don't know, 20 or 17. Okay, and then let's do one final render. Okay, so no changes were made to the bottom of the base shadow of the wine glass, obviously because we didn't tweak anything. But if we come back to the wine glass from the spotlight here, you can notice a subtle difference. There's just, this one's a little bit more hard edged, whereas from this one, not as intense. So we tweaked this up and softened up really well. But it's just a matter of what your preferences are, what you want, and that sort of spiel. So I think I'm just going to leave it here for now and say that whatever you want to set up for your scene, this is just going to be a general level of what an average scene would be, but obviously there could be a lot more to this. I mean, we can add an extra spotlight over here and brighten this area up. We can obviously tweak the shadows on the bottom of the wine glass along with the shadow from the spotlight. And obviously the color right now from the first spotlight is white, but we can probably change that to maybe I guess a softer yellow, or maybe the one color we had initially for the point light, and maybe just brighten that up a little bit so it's between a white and maybe a yellow. But I think I'm going to leave it up to you guys to decide what you want to do. So I hope this gives you a better understanding of how lights work and the transparency and the shadow concepts to it. I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, let me know. Once again, just to kind of preface, I'm not an expert at this stuff, and I'm still learning this myself, but I'm just giving you a general level of what you can do with the shadows and the settings you have available to really tweak it out and to really make these stand out a lot better than what you see right now. So, but anyway, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next video. So, take care.